Hey folks, I wanted to chat about pronouns today because I feel like a lot of cis people don't fully understand how important pronouns are and why using the wrong ones are so harmful. So I wanted to talk about that today. First off, this is a new tangle that I got. It's one of the ones from the new series, and it is called something along the lines of candy or cotton candy, something like that. So let's start off with talking about respecting pronouns. Pronouns are like one of the first very very important like expressions of identity, just like with your name. So, and it's like the first way that the world, one of the first ways that the world perceives who you are. So the way I would compare being misgendered to for cis people, obviously you're not going to find this as irritating or as upsetting as misgendering is to trans people, but like this might give you like a little bit of an idea. I'm sure that a lot of cis people can relate to being called the wrong name or having your name mispronounced. Like at the beginning it's like a little bit irritating, but you have the patience to explain to people what your name is and teach them how to pronounce it and get them used to it. But after it happens like over and over and over, you might start getting frustrated because first off, it's just wrong, and second off, you don't really want other people to start referring to you by the wrong name too. Or something similar with like nicknames. If somebody starts calling you a mean nickname, you get frustrated when they continue to do it because you don't want other people to pick up on that nickname and start calling you it. Another way that I would explain it to people is if somebody was introducing you to a group of people and they showed the group of people a picture of you with an Instagram filter on. And then you're going to meet all of those people. So when you meet all of those people, they have like negative reactions to you not looking like your Instagram photos. So for example, they might think that you look tired, or that you're sick, or that you're just not as pretty as you are in person, or you look older. All of those things. And it's frustrating to try to explain to them that that's not, that those assumptions that they had were incorrect. I also want to mention that you do not ever intentionally misgender a trans person, even if they are like the most horrible person in the world. So an example that is not too upsetting that I can give is Caitlyn Jenner. Lots of trans people hate her. Okay, like that's, I feel like it's a common misconception that a lot of trans people like Caitlyn Jenner. We do not. The large majority of us really do not like her. And we don't believe what she believes and all of that. But that does not give you an excuse to use the wrong pronouns for her or to dead name her. Dead naming is using the name that they had left in their past when they transitioned. And the reason that is because it shows trans people around you that you have a limit on when you're going to continue to respect a trans person. And like, you wouldn't ever do that to a cis person in the same scenario. You don't go around misgendering the cis people that you hate. So for example, if there's a trans murderer, people will frequently misgender them and use the wrong pronouns for them. But if there's a cis murderer, people don't ever think to do that. That's not even a thought that crosses their mind. So you're treating cis people and trans people differently, and that's inherently transphobia. But plus, it also teaches the trans people around you that you do not think that they always deserve respect. And I understand that you might think, well, this is an extreme situation. None of my trans friends are going to be murderers, and therefore they shouldn't worry about me misgendering them. But the thing is, trans people do not know what your limit is. And we have experienced being mistreated for the most minor things. So, like, we don't know if you're going to misgender us because we don't pass. We're not sure that we don't know if you're going to misgender us because we have too many tattoos or piercings or hair color, or we look too wild or out there. We don't know if you're going to misgender us because we're gender nonconforming. We don't have any idea. So you just teach us by showing that there is, in fact, a line where you decide to misgender and dead name trans people, that we are not safe with you, and we do not know where that line is, and that you think that you can decide on a whim that if you don't like us, you can just misgender us and dead name us, and that's not okay. So let's talk about the most commonly used pronouns. So they are he, him, she, her, and they, them. and most people know how to use these. I do want to give like a little bit of an explanation on they them pronouns. So first off, they them pronouns are not grammatically incorrect if you use them for a singular person. Singular they them has been used longer in the English language than singular you has been used. So, and also language just changes and evolves, and it's not a strict set of rules. I did have trouble with this when I was just beginning to figure out my gender identity, and I think it was in part because I was autistic and I felt like I had to follow the rules. But it's very important to understand that there are not strict rules for language. Language evolves, language changes. There are different dialects of language, and they're all equally correct. There's not a right and wrong way to use language. And also, using they them but acting like it's a singular pronoun in like grammatically is also incorrect. So you don't say they is, you would say they are, even if the person is a singular person. Another thing with that is that my brain is having a time, sorry. Is that people have different preferences whether they want you to call them themself or themselves. A lot of trans people are okay with either. There are certain people who have very specific thoughts about that. So for example, I prefer themself. And there are some trans people who might prefer themselves, specifically people with DID who are trans, or use they them pronouns, because they are in fact plural. And they would want the language people use to reflect that they are plural. So I just wanted to mention that, respect what people's pronouns are, and listen to them if they give you a distinction about how to use them. And I'm not saying like it's inherently wrong if somebody wants you to say they is. I'm just saying that commonly the way that you use those pronoun sets is the same way you would use them if you were talking about a group of multiple people, or if you were talking about somebody you didn't know. So for example, if you were to say, see somebody's phone on the ground and you didn't know who the person was who dropped their phone, you would say, oh, they dropped their phone. So you're already using gender neutral, like they thems in the singular form. But if you were to say, like they are doing a parade, and it might be a singular person who's doing a parade, which is a bad example because most time multiple people do parades. But like if you're saying they are putting on a float and it may be one person who's putting on a float, you would still say they are. So you don't have to overthink it and try to make it super singular. Most people just say they are instead of they is. Also I wanted to talk about people who use multiple pronoun sets. So that would be if somebody's pronouns were he, they, or she, they, or all pronouns. And I wanted to go over like how you would use multiple pronoun sets, because a lot of cis people tend to not fully understand and think that they're using them correctly, but they're in fact misgendering the person, or it might be considered misgendering, or it might be at least upsetting to the person. So I wanted to go over some basics for how you should use multiple pronoun sets. So first off, the best way to figure it out is to ask the person. Now you can't just go up and ask a person in the middle of a crowded area like how you're supposed to use their pronouns. You need to ask it in private, and you need to ask it politely. So if you don't think that you can do that, or if you don't think that you can ask them without singling them out as a trans person because that can out them, you are going to want to use these other tips. So, do you know their assigned gender at birth? If you do not know their assigned gender at birth, do not ask them. Never ever ask somebody what their assigned gender at birth is. It's not relevant, you don't need to know it, but if you do know it, it can help you figure out how to use their pronouns if you can't also ask them like how to use their pronouns. And also, if you're gonna go up to them and ask them what their assigned gender at birth is, it would just be so much more polite to ask them what their pronouns are and how to use them. So, it's not important, like you shouldn't go up to somebody and ask them what their assigned gender at birth is. But if you do know, then what you should do is you should use the pronoun set that does not align with their gender assigned at birth. So for example, if somebody is AFAB or assigned female at birth and they use she, her, and they, them pronouns, you're going to want to use they, them pronouns for that person. And the reason why is because a lot of cis people will default to the pronoun that aligns with that person's gender assigned at birth, because that makes cis people the most comfortable. And it can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people who use multiple pronoun sets to have one pronoun set favored over the other pronoun set. So in that situation, you would want to use they, them for that person. Also, do you know what most people call them? And this is like the easiest way to figure out what pronouns you should use. If most people, like for example, if you have an AFAB trans person who is transmasculine and uses he, they pronouns, and everyone calls this person he, what you're going to want to do is use they, them pronouns. Again, you want to even out the balance of pronouns. So a lot of cis people will default to the binary pronoun because that is easiest for them, because they, are opposed to using singular they. So what you want to do is you want to use the pronoun that's being the least used for somebody. Now this is one that a lot of cis people are going to be uncomfortable with, and a lot of cis people are going to be confused by, and I understand that, and you do not have to use this unless somebody specifically tells you that this is the way that they want their pronouns to be used. But like, if you are able to do this, please do it. It is usually the most ideal way to use somebody's pronouns, so you don't have this like random, like different people are deciding what pronouns to use for you. So what you want to do is you want to understand what all of their pronouns are. So for example, if you have somebody who uses all pronouns, you're going to want to alternate the pronouns between themselves, or you're going to want to switch between those pronouns at given intervals. So for example, if somebody uses he, she, they pronouns, you would want to say something along the lines of, oh, this is my friend, I met her in kindergarten, he really likes to read, and they are my +1 to this dance, or something along those lines. Like, I don't know what situation it's going to be, but something like that. Or you could interchange them like based on paragraph if you're having a long conversation with somebody. So you could say, oh, this is my friend, she and I met in first grade, or kindergarten, I don't know what I said last time, and she really likes to read. He is a really close friend of mine, he has always been there when I've been upset, something like that. You want to switch out the pronouns at given intervals. If you're having a short conversation, you're going to want to use, you want to switch the pronouns out more frequently. So if you're just using one sentence and there are multiple pronouns in that sentence, you're going to want to switch it out more quickly. Now, if there are other pronouns in your sentence that might confuse the scenario, you don't have to do this. You can just use one pronoun for like a significant chunk of it, just so you want to be clear. But yeah, so that's another way to use multiple sets of pronouns. Now, I want to talk about neopronouns. And neopronouns are pronouns that are not he, she, or they. And these are pronouns that have been created more recently. Now, I want you to understand that by more recently, we mean like within the last couple hundred years. These are not like super new. They're not like invented in the 2000s. Some of them are, but like a lot of them have existed for a while, but they're just not like original parts of the English language. I mean, no words are the original part of the English language because it's evolved over time, but they're not like pronouns that were like originally had a place in the English language. So they're like more recently created as opposed to like being created thousands of years ago. So for example, z, them, zers, or z, here, here's, those are some pronoun sets. I apologize if I'm a little stilted in this part because I'm not super familiar with some of the most common neopronouns. So you need to respect neopronouns. So, if there's a non-binary person who uses zers pronouns, you do not want to call z they, because using they them pronouns for them is for zer, sorry, I'm getting confused. Maybe for them, I'm not super familiar, but is still misgendering them. So you want to be using their neopronouns. Now, there is an option for if you have a significant disability that makes it incredibly hard to use neopronouns. So for example, if you're an AAC user and you don't have neopronouns programmed into your device, some people will have like I don't remember what it's called, but like a default pronoun that you can default to if you absolutely have to. Now, this is not an excuse for able-bodied people and able-minded people to just go in and be like, well, I can't use neopronouns, so I'm just going to use these pronouns. No, it's for like if you have a significant reason why you can't use them. Now, people who use Proloquo to Go don't actually have that excuse anymore, because there are very easy ways to program neopronouns, especially the most common ones, into your device. So not everyone who uses an AIC has that excuse. And it's not really an excuse, because some people like genuinely cannot use those pronouns. But only use that if you absolutely need to. So for example, if somebody uses z, them, zers pronouns, and they're like and their default is they, them, then if somebody absolutely cannot use neopronouns, they can refer to that person as them. But that is like last resort. Don't go and do that immediately. Now, neopronouns are very important because what they do is they step outside the binary. There's like a whole big history of neopronouns and how they're used, and they're like stepping out of the part of it is that a lot of trans people don't want cis people to be comfortable, because cis people really push their comfort ahead of trans people's safety. So it can be freeing to use pronouns that confuse cis people, and it can be freeing to really need to teach cis people how to use this and put the responsibility on cis people to learn and become familiar. There are other reasons, such as like they feel better for a person, and there are some reasons. So this is very unique to a lot of neurodivergent people, and I want you to understand that this is not how all people who use neopronouns feel about the reason they use neopronouns, but some people will use neopronouns because they relate to gender outside of the binary and typically understanding of gender. So for example, somebody can perceive their gender as masculine in the way that like the sun is masculine, for example, or their gender can be really strongly related to a special interest. So somebody can feel like an intimate part of their gender is frogs, and that is something really hard to explain to people who do not have the same experience of gender. And it's not that people are sitting here being like, my gender is frogs, I am a frog, refer to me as a frog. It's like, frogs relate to my gender in a way that I cannot fully explain. For example, people aren't out here being like, I am literally a star. People are being here like, stars resonate with me in a way that fits into gender, in a way that a lot of cis people do not understand, in a way that a lot of binary trans people do not understand. And that is something that's like very important to somebody. So for example, there are other sets of pronouns that are noun self pronouns. So for example, I'm just gonna pull random one out of the air. Dirt, dirt's, dirt self. Or fey, fair, fair self. Or fey self. I'm a little bit confused on how you use that one. And those are also important, and you should use them, and you can't discount them because, you think that you're something non-human. And that's not what the case is. It's that it relates to their gender in a specific way, or they just feel happy using those pronouns. You don't have to understand why somebody uses the pronouns they do. Just use them for them. It's very simple. And if you get confused on how to use neopronouns, here's like my guide. So what you want to do is you want to ask them what are the 5 forms of this pronoun, and you want to line that up with like she, her, or he, him. So like, or they, them. So think like it would be he, him, his, himself, or maybe like one more in there somewhere. And you want to line that up with the 5 forms of the pronoun that person gives you, and then use it in a sentence. There are ways to do this very easily. So for example, Pronouns page is a website where people can post what their pronouns are and how you should refer to them, and you can click on it and it'll give you an example in some sentences so you can learn how to use it. You don't have to be like a grammar buff and understand every form of every individual pronoun to fully understand how to use it. But like I've done this before because I have trouble with ones that are not like very simply understood as like replacing the entire pronoun with a noun. So I get confused with like z, them, zers pronouns, and I have to learn how to use them. And I might mess up significantly more than I might with other ones, but I will continue to try to use them correctly because that's someone's correct pronouns and you don't want to misgender them. Also, if you misgender somebody by accident, do not make it all about you. Do not go, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. Like, that's just making it about you and making the trans person feel like they have to comfort you. So what you should do is either just correct it really quickly, or if somebody corrects you, just say either I'm sorry and move on, or thank you for letting me know and move on. You want to make it a very short and not a whole big thing that the trans person has to comfort you and make sure that you know that you're doing great or whatever. I also want to talk about emoji self pronouns. So these are ones that are uniquely used online, and a lot of people get very confused. But what emoji self pronouns are is you literally just use an emoji instead of a pronoun. And people use that in texting, people use that on social media, and they don't usually have an orally pronounced version of them. Mine personally do, because I like the way that I would think that I would pronounce them in my head. But a lot of the time it's simply for like a text version of something. So let's talk about my pronouns. I usually say that I use he, him, and they, them pronouns. I list he, him first because that's what I prefer, because a lot of people use they, them for me. You know, using them interchangeably or using whatever one people don't usually use for me is great. Now, there are pronouns that I don't usually tell cis people about. I have a lot of pronouns that I'm okay with, but the ones that I really like are frog, frog, frogs, frog self, and mush, 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 mush self. And those equate with the frog emoji and the mushroom emoji, but those are specifically for Apple products like iPhones, because I don't like the way that they look on other products. So, yeah, it's very hard to explain. For me, it's just that they feel right and they feel like they express part of my identity. And it might not necessarily be like gender identity, it just expresses part of me. And, you know, like for example, gender presentation. Like the way you present yourself does not always have to do with your gender. The way you present yourself might do with like the bands you like, or the colors you like, or the style that you like. So pronouns are also part of your presentation, and they don't have to always be about your gender. They can just be about stuff that you like. They could just be about your expression. And some people just feel more comfortable with those. Now, I do want you to know that I don't exclusively use neo-pronouns and emoji self-pronouns. You can use he, him, and they, them for me. That's usually what I feel most comfortable telling cis people about. But, you know, if you're familiar with other sets of pronouns, like, go ahead and use those for me. Because nobody uses those for me at the moment, and it would be really nice to see people use them for me. You know, if somebody exclusively uses neo-pronouns or emoji self-pronouns, although you can't really exclusively use emoji self-pronouns because you have to have a pronounceable version, then just use those for them, and learn how to use them. That was my discussion about pronouns. Do all the normal things, like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell if you want to. All of the normal YouTube things. Bye. Have a nice